We are going on an adventure.
Join me as I take you to some of the world's most incredible and romantic ruins. We'll talk about the history, the people, the stories. I'm Evelyn Edwards, and this is Queen of the Castles.
Hi friends, you know what time it is. It's castle time, and you definitely don't want to miss this one. This is one of my absolutely most favorite castles ever. We've got some great stories for you. Come on with me. We are at the gorgeous Kilchurn Castle, right over my shoulder here, on the northern shores of Loch Awe. The castle was built around 1450 by Sir Colin Campbell. And Colin, in his day, was known as Black Colin Campbell of Rome. He got this name because he was a crusader, and he traveled extensively. He fought against the Turks in Rhodes. Now, we say that Colin built this castle, but behind every great man is a great woman. And because Colin was off traveling so often, his wife oversaw it. You might say she was the project manager of the building of this castle.
There's a fantastic legend about Colin and his wife, Lady Margaret. While Colin was away fighting in the Crusades, he had a horrible nightmare. The dream was so bad that Colin went to a priest to get advice about the dream. The priest told him to go back home to his wife and Kilchurn Castle immediately. Colin had been away from Scotland for 7 years, and while he had tried to correspond with his family at home, his letters had been intercepted by his rival. This rival told Lady Margaret that her husband had died in the Crusades and offered to marry her. On the very day of the wedding, Colin arrived at the castle. Colin, not recognizable because of his poor travel clothes, was able to enter the wedding feast as a beggar right past the guards of his rival. They allowed him in as an act of charity. Colin ate the food, but asked for a drink from the lady of the house. Margaret, amused, gave this disguised beggar a drink. After drinking, Colin gave back the goblet to Lady Margaret, dropping a ring inside that she had given him when he had left. Colin pulled back his cloak. Lady Margaret, shocked at her husband's presence, immediately announced her laird had returned. All of Colin's clansmen that were at the wedding jumped into action and threw the rival and all of his men out of the castle and celebrated Colin's return.
The castle, when it was built, would have been on a tiny island, and the only way to get there would have been through an underwater causeway. Kilchurn Castle was strategically in a fantastic place on Loch Awe. So at the medieval times, at that time, they used these lochs as like highways to be able to reach the difficult areas in Argyll. So it would have been in a really great place. In the 19th century, they ended up lowering the water level, and this was the first time, this would have been the first time that you would have been able to reach the castle by land, 19th century. The Campbells presided over a vast amount of land in this area, and they had up to 7 castles at one time. So they didn't actually live in Kilchurn Castle. They had an ally family, the MacGregors, look after it up until the 17th century. In the 17th century, a bitter dispute happened between the MacGregor clan and the Campbells. So bad that another Colin, Grey Colin, ended up personally executing the head of the MacGregor clan. And the name MacGregor was outlawed by King James VI. Kilchurn Castle was only besieged one time for 2 days in 1654. And this was during the War of the Three Kingdoms. And those 3 kingdoms were England, Scotland, and Ireland. And what these wars were about was governance and religion. The king of the time was Charles I. He was king of England, Scotland, and Ireland. And what he believed was that he had supreme power over Parliament. Parliament didn't agree with him, and they ended up executing Charles I. You may ask, what does that have to do with Kilchurn Castle? What happened next is Charles II, Charles I's son, got an army together and tried to become king again of England, Scotland, and Ireland. And the Campbell clan said, if you sign the Solemn League and Covenant, which allowed Scotland to follow their religion and worship in the way that they wanted to, and that they would back Charles II. Well, Charles II's army ended up collapsing, and because the Campbell clan backed him, Oliver Cromwell, who was in charge of the parliamentarians, led a whole bunch of attacks against Campbell's strongholds, and one of those was Kilchurn Castle.
The initials you see above the door here are for Sir John Campbell and his second wife, Mary. John ended up acquiring a whole bunch of land from George Sinclair, the 6th Earl of Caithness, by foreclosing on his large amounts of debts. In the 1680s, he also led an extremely bloody campaign, killing countless numbers of Sinclairs. He also had a nickname and was known as Slippery John because he played both the government and the Jacobites, securing money in the dealings between them. Yeah, not the best guy.
Okay, friends, we are going on a paranormal adventure. You are entering the haunted story zone. I feel like I should put the flashlight underneath my chin. So Kilchurn Castle has a lot of paranormal stories having to do with it. It is probably the second most famous and photographed castle in all of Scotland, next to Eilean Castle. I go to so many of these historic sites and I get asked all the time whether or not I've ever felt anything, or I've experienced a ghost, or I have a ghost story. And the truth is, honestly, 99% of the time, I never feel anything. But what I will say about Kilchurn Castle is you definitely have this sense of unwelcome. Truly. The most famous ghost story associated with this castle is that there was a child that was locked, imprisoned up in the tower, and you can hear disembodied voices. There's also a story, and actually there's some campers just across the water from us right now, that there were 2 campers, a couple that stayed here, and they went up to the top of the castle, and immediately the temperature changed, and they heard a voice saying, "Please free me." And it scared the crap out of them, and they ran out of the castle. There's stories of footsteps, and it's even logged in the paranormal database. So if you want to go on a haunted story excavation find, there's lots of amazing stuff for you to go look up with Kilchurn Castle.
In 1715 and 1745, Kilchurn Castle was used as a government garrison during the Jacobite Rebellion. And finally, in 1760, the castle was badly damaged by lightning and was completely abandoned.
This is Kilchurn Castle. I hope you have had a wonderful time with us. I love the weather right now in Scotland with all the autumn leaves. I actually think that coming to Scotland in the autumn is so much better than the summer. If you liked this episode, give us a thumbs up or a subscribe. And I'm Evelyn Edwards, and this is Queen of the Castles.